have a look at the writing that's been hiding underneath.
So no one's seen that writing for 4,000 or 5,000 years?
Yeah, the only person that's seen it previously is the one who wrote it.
What if everything we thought we knew about human civilization is completely wrong? Around 6,000 years ago, in what is now modern-day Iraq, a mysterious civilization appeared, seemingly out of nowhere. The Sumerians. No slow evolution, no gradual progress. They suddenly built cities, created the world's first writing system, and developed knowledge far ahead of their time.
Astronomical references, a moon, a star, various symbols, which even could be symbolized as a wristwatch, technology being used 6,000 years ago.
Now, using advanced machine learning, AI is finally decoding thousands of these forgotten tablets, revealing patterns, connections, and meanings that humans struggled to uncover for decades.
Have you seen the new scans where they've found new petroglyphs?
Yeah. The man, there's gonna be so much like that that's gonna be found. People are gonna be able to.
What is all that stuff?
References to cosmic cycles, advanced tech, and genetic codes. And when you hear what AI just uncovered in their latest translation, you'll be shocked. The strange civilization. What if the story of human civilization didn't start the way we think it did? 6,000 years ago, in a land between two great rivers, something happened that still shakes historians today. In modern Iraq, where the Tigris and Euphrates flow, a sudden civilization rose almost overnight. They called themselves the Black-Headed Ones. We know them as the Sumerians. Now here's the thing. This wasn't some slow climb from hunting and gathering. Other cultures needed thousands of years to develop writing, laws, and astronomy, but in Sumer it all seemed to explode at once. Villages transformed into vast city-states, Eridu, Uruk, Ur, and at the heart of it all, mud. But this wasn't just any mud. The Sumerians saw potential that no one else did. They baked it into bricks, built entire cities with it, and shaped it into vessels and tokens for trade. But the real breakthrough, they used it to create memory. They invented cuneiform, wedge-shaped marks pressed into clay tablets, and that changed everything. For the first time, humans could record thoughts permanently. Not just grain counts or tax lists, though those mattered, but royal decrees, contracts, poetry, and entire stories. Stories that would outlive their creators by millennia. And get this. When they started writing numbers, they didn't mess around. They used a base 60 system, and the truth is, we still live with that legacy today. 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, 360 degrees in a circle. That level of mathematical precision was baked into their mud tablets thousands of years ago. But here's where it gets strange. The more scholars dug through those tablets, the more unexpected stuff they found. Nestled between records of barley shipments and beer recipes were references to ritual medicine, odd astronomical notes, even whispers of knowledge that seemed way ahead of its time. Now, fast forward to today. Tens of thousands of those clay tablets are sitting in museums and storage rooms around the world, but reading them has been brutal. One tablet might have over 1,000 unique signs, and each sign can mean different things depending on context. It used to take scholars a lifetime just to get decent at reading this stuff. Only a tiny group of experts could even try. And that's where AI changes the game. In Munich, researchers started using machine learning to digitally piece together broken tablets. Think of it like solving the world's oldest and hardest jigsaw puzzle. At first, the AI could only match fragments, but it learned fast. Soon, it could recognize writing patterns, isolate text, and even read across different scribes and styles spanning centuries. By 2023, teams at Tel Aviv and Ariel University had built an AI that could translate Akkadian, the language of many cuneiform tablets, into English almost instantly. Stuff that used to take years now took hours. As Big Think put it, it was like combining Google Translate with a time machine. And just as this tech was getting scary good, the archaeologists struck gold figuratively. New digs revealed tablets in such pristine condition that they could serve as master texts to help verify the AI's translations. Up in northern Iraq, at a site called Kurd Kalston, they uncovered a cache of tablets dating back to around 1800 BCE. but researchers suspect these were actually transcribed versions of even older originals. Around this same time, another site, Girsu, one of the earliest Sumerian cities, coughed up more than 200 untouched cuneiform tablets along with 60 cylinder seals. The kicker: these finds were preserved in bitumen-lined containers which protected them from moisture and damage. And because these tablets referenced even earlier events, many historians now think they hold knowledge from the dawn of Sumer itself. But the story wasn't slowing down. By 2025, fresh tools from Würzburg University were pushing boundaries even further. They could now catch idioms, technical phrases, and subtle meanings that human translators had overlooked for decades. But what was it saying? Well, it turns out those unusual astronomical notes weren't just random observations. The tablets revealed detailed records of planetary motion, solstices, and even hints of Earth's precession, a subtle wobble in the planet's rotation that modern astronomers only fully understood in recent times. So, were the Sumerians tracking cosmic cycles stretching tens of thousands of years? The data says yes, but it didn't stop with the stars. The discoveries kept coming. In medicine, the tablets described antiseptics, trauma care, even pulse diagnostics. They recorded family health data in ways that suggested an understanding of inherited traits, something genetics wouldn't formally explain until the modern age. And then things got electric, literally. Some tablets described copper and iron containers immersed in acidic liquids. The words they used, currents, spark, powerful glow, sound familiar. The so-called Baghdad battery, an ancient artifact discovered millennia later, matches this description almost exactly. Were the Sumerians experimenting with electricity thousands of years ago? Whether it was by accident or design, they were documenting processes that line up strangely well with modern electrical ideas. But the biggest twist, it wasn't just about science. Some of the darkest, strangest references in the tablets speak of stones that scorch the earth and poison fields, buried deep to contain their danger. Today we know about desert glass, fused quartz formed by extreme heat, possibly from meteor impacts or something else. Could those ancient stones be connected? Some researchers think so. Others whisper of lost technologies or weapons that defy simple explanation. And that's where the myth part comes crashing in. The Anunnaki, you've probably heard that name before. In early Sumerian myth, they were cosmic judges, spiritual beings, but in modern fringe theories popularized by Zecharia Sitchin, they become ancient astronauts. According to Sitchin, the Anunnaki came from a distant planet called Nibiru over 400,000 years ago. Their mission to mine Earth's gold, and to do that they supposedly engineered humans as a labor force through genetic manipulation. Outlandish, maybe. But here's the thing. AI is starting to pick up strange technical language buried in the mythic passages. References to energy vessels, divine codes, sealed chambers with breathable air, terms that sound a little too engineered to dismiss outright. But let's hold on to that for a second. We'll touch on it soon. And those once thought to mean divine boats or flying chariots are now revealing details like airflow systems, sealed cabins, and protective coverings. Are we reading distorted accounts of ancient technology? The more AI translates, the blurrier that line becomes. Before we dive any deeper, though, if you haven't already hit that subscribe and like button, go ahead and run that up real quick. Show love before we move on. The origin of the human race. But the story of Sumer isn't only about stars and flying chariots, it's about us. And their tablets don't hint at human origins. They declare it. Texts like the Atrahasis and Eridu Genesis hold nothing back. They say humanity was created not by chance, not by nature, but by intention. So here's the setup. The way these tablets describe it, there was a full-scale rebellion in the heavens. The lesser gods, called the Igigi, were tired of doing hard labor, and when they finally rose up, the higher gods, the Anunnaki, needed replacements quickly. Their solution? Create a completely new being, one that could follow orders and handle the tough work. And how did they do it? According to the tablets, by shaping a human from clay and what they called divine essence. And they gave this first human a name, Adamu. Sound familiar? Yeah, you're not alone. The similarities to later religious texts are a bit hard to ignore, but that's not even the strangest part. At first, these humans were apparently flawed, sterile, not very intelligent, basically not ready for real use. So what did they do? They modified them again and again until they finally got it right. Humans who could reproduce and get to work. Now here's where things begin to sound a little less like myth and a lot more like a lab experiment. Thanks to AI, we're picking up phrases hidden in these ancient lines like essence mixture, prototype output, reproductive capacity. And naturally, this is where ancient astronaut theorists start leaning in hard, because they point to modern genetic mysteries like the sudden fusion of human chromosome 2 as possible leftovers from ancient interference. Did someone out there alter us? Mainstream scientists say no, but the debate, it's far from settled. And speaking of ancient visitors, here comes one of the most debated parts of the whole story: Nibiru. Yeah, Zecharia Sitchin's well-known theory. He claimed the Anunnaki came from a distant planet on a strange looping orbit, one that takes 3,600 years to circle the sun. According to him, they first arrived about 450,000 years ago, and every time Nibiru passed near Earth, it triggered waves of civilizational rise and collapse. Now, whether you believe that or not, here's the thing. Sumerian tablets do record catastrophes. Major ones, massive floods, droughts, climate disasters, and they often connect these events to unusual celestial happenings. Red skies, reversed rivers, stars that hunt the land. So were they describing Nibiru or just natural disasters seen through a cosmic perspective? And this is where AI starts making things even more complicated, because it's showing that many of these old tablets don't just tell wild stories, they read like survival manuals. But let's leave that aside for a moment, because there's another part of the story that remains just as strange even today: the Sumerian king list. Their king list, which is basically this ancient record where they documented who ruled and for how long, doesn't exactly begin with rulers sitting on thrones for 40 years and then stepping down. No, the first king, Alulim, his reign supposedly lasted 28,800 years. The next one, Dumuzid, 36,000. Now move forward through the list, and later kings ruled for more realistic spans, hundreds of years instead of thousands. But even that isn't exactly normal. Mainstream scholars, of course, say these are just symbolic numbers, meant to represent divine authority. You know, our king, so powerful he basically ruled forever. But others think something entirely different was happening, and that's where the rabbit hole begins. Could these kings have literally been hybrids? Part human, part something else, specifically the Anunnaki? Now let's throw some archaeology on the fire. There's this tomb, Queen Puabi's tomb, dated around 2600 BC, and when they opened it, they found a skull that didn't quite match what you'd expect. No, it wasn't like the cranial deformation you see in some ancient cultures where they bind the head to make it look a certain way. This skull was naturally elongated. That's not supposed to happen. And nearby, skeletal remains that stood over 7 feet tall, which in Sumerian populations is super rare. I mean, even today that's rare. So were these just random genetic outliers, or were they physical traces of something more? Now here's where the ancient texts get even weirder. The Sumerians were obsessed with blood purity. Over and over again they talk about the seed of Anu, and they weren't just writing poetry. These guys had dynastic marriages, strict rituals, and laws, all designed to preserve a very specific bloodline, and it wasn't unique to them. This idea pops up all over the ancient world. Egyptian pharaohs said they were descended from gods. Inca rulers claimed they came from the sun. Even Tibetan Dalai Lamas are chosen as reincarnations of divine beings, but the Sumerians may have been the first to write it all down. And here's where it gets tricky. The Sumerian language is loaded with words that can mean a lot of different things depending on the context, like the word me. It can mean a divine decree, a cultural concept, or even a physical object. That's led to some pretty wild interpretations over the years. Zecharia Sitchin, for example, claimed some of these texts described power-packed objects, One of his big claims was that tablet VA243 was actually a star map. Except, no, that one's been debunked. Turns out it's just a simple dedication, not an astronomical chart. The mysterious warning. But the Sumerians didn't just leave us fascinating myths and clay tablets about gods and kings. They left behind warnings, real ones. You might assume they were describing one massive flood or some dramatic disaster tale, but that's not the case. The Sumerians spoke about cycles, repeating patterns, entire ages of growth rising and then falling apart again and again. It's all recorded right there in their star records. And here's where it gets strange. AI is now linking those ancient patterns with real-world climate catastrophes we already know about. Take the 4.2 kilo-year drought, complete collapse of civilizations, or the sudden downfall of the Akkadian Empire, famines, mass migrations. We have scientific proof of these events, but in the tablets they describe them in a completely different way. Red skies, a darkened sun, stars that threaten the land, rivers literally changing direction. For a long time, scholars simply dismissed this as poetic language. Ancient people trying to dramatize natural disasters. But now, AI is highlighting these as possible descriptions of real celestial events, which raises a huge question. Were the Sumerians witnessing something in the sky that we've forgotten here on Earth? And just when you think it can't get any stranger, the Sumerians had their own League of Gods. And I'm not referring to the Anunnaki this time, that's just the surface layer. Once you look deeper, you discover a pantheon that could rival any modern fantasy world. I mean, they had gods for storms, healing, the moon, scribes, even specific winds, and those are only the ones we know about. So let's begin with the main figure, Enlil. This figure wasn't just a wind god, he literally separated heaven from earth. That's how his myth starts. And get this, Enlil was so sacred that not even the other gods dared to look directly at him. He ruled from a massive temple called Ekur in Nippur and basically controlled everything, from agriculture to kingship to the very laws of existence themselves. We're talking about cosmic executive authority here. Now Enki, he was the trickster, god of freshwater, wisdom, and creation, the kind of cosmic engineer you definitely want on your side. His story, he overthrew his own father, shaped the world, and supposedly granted humans the power of intellect and magic. The guy was essentially the ancient version of a brilliant inventor. And here's an interesting twist. His sister, Gadamdug, was a goddess of healing and fertility. Not a well-known name today, but back then she was called upon during childbirth and wellness rituals, a caring force often overshadowed by the more dramatic myths. Then things get intense. Enter Inanna, later known as Ishtar. This goddess represented love, war, political power, and bold, unapologetic ambition. Her symbol was an 8-pointed star, and her myths, wild. One story tells of her descending into the underworld to take over her sister's realm. She ended up dying, hung on a hook, and was only brought back to life by exchanging her own husband's life. Some scholars believe that the entire story was an early way to explain the cycle of seasons, death in winter, rebirth in spring, but it doesn't end there. Utu, also known as Shamash, was the sun god, born of Nina and Ningal. He wasn't only about light, he carried justice and law, literally revealing truth as he moved across the sky each day. And his father, Nana, the moon god, was so honored that one of history's first known authors, Enheduanna, served as a high priestess in his temple. The first named author in recorded history was a woman composing hymns to a moon deity. That's simply amazing. And hidden within the myths is Ninmah. Hardly anyone mentions her, but she was Enlil's scribe, a librarian of the gods, midwife to humanity's creation, and a healer. Think about that. A goddess who was essentially the guardian of cosmic knowledge. She definitely deserves more recognition. Now it goes even further. An, the Sky Father, was seen as the ultimate ancestor, sometimes symbolized as a celestial bull. His partner Kai, the Earth Mother, had a myth so daring it may have been shared quietly rather than openly. Their union with their own child, Enlil, supposedly brought all life on Earth into existence. Some believe this wasn't just about fertility, but a cosmic metaphor for the connection of all life itself. And then there's Anzu, a massive thunderbird who literally stole the tablets of destiny from Enlil. These weren't just symbols, these were actual objects of divine power. The battle to recover them became the stuff of legend. Depending on the version, either Ninurta or Marduk defeated the bird. But here's the point. By the time the Babylonians introduced their epic creation myth, the Enuma Elish, the Sumerian pantheon had expanded to more than 300 deities. And the deeper researchers explore those ancient clay tablets, the more names they uncover. Dozens of gods barely recognized today, many resting in museum archives, partly translated, their stories unfinished. And here's a fascinating theory. Some scholars believe there may have been local gods tied to specific natural elements. One god for a certain spring, another for reeds in a marsh, even for individual winds, meaning every new fragment we discover could reveal a completely forgotten god. Now, before you assume this is just a simple collection of stories, here's where it gets complicated. Understanding Sumerian myth isn't about reading a complete book. It's more like solving a puzzle with half the pieces missing. Most of what we know comes from clay tablets, many of them broken or worn down by time. Scholars have to reconstruct a single story from fragments found in different locations, sometimes written centuries apart. And even when they do, the language itself creates challenges. Cuneiform writing is incredibly complex. A single syllable could be carved in 25 different ways. Add in shifts between Sumerian, Akkadian, and Neo-Babylonian dialects, not to mention poetic language and layered metaphors, and every translation becomes a high-stakes act of interpretation. And you know what's even more surprising? For a long time, Western scholars dismissed many of these gods as unimportant, primitive, regional variations. Entire deities were overlooked or misclassified. Even the famous myth of Inanna's descent into the underworld wasn't fully reconstructed until the 1900s, and it took decades for scholars to piece together its complete story. Were the Sumerians early scientists, witnesses to something beyond our world, or is our modern perspective reshaping ancient truths? The deeper we explore, the stranger it becomes. What do you think those glowing jewels and sparking rods really represented? Share your thoughts below. I read every comment. And if you want more stories that make you question everything you thought you knew, hit that subscribe button. More is on the way.